Hi there, and welcome to A Novel Talk, our podcast. I'm Carl Lee, along with my co host, Wendy Kendall. Um, I am an author of paranormal fantasy. I enjoy witches and ghosts and demons, but just not so horrific. Wendy?
Thanks, Carl. I'm Wendy Kendall. I have a romantic mystery, my most recent book, Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For. It's available at all online retailers. Desiree and Leo are tangled up in romance and mystery. She's a first grade teacher, and he's on the school's maintenance staff, and they are falling in love. Desiree is being stalked by who? There are several suspects, including Leo. Is he Desiree's the one or the stalker? And my mystery book, Cat Out of the Bag, that's Cat with a K for Catherine Watson. She's a purse designer and amateur sleuth who goes from designer bags to body bags when she's faced with a murder mystery. In the prequel, Pistachio Makes a Splash, Catherine and Mayor Brenda Durling investigate a chilling cold case. And I'm so excited to announce that I just signed a contract for a new romance mystery, Cherry Shakes in the Park, that will be coming out this summer. So watch for that. It's really exciting. And now back to Carl.
Thanks, Wendy. It is exciting. I can't wait for it to come out. Um, and welcome to A Novel Talk with Nancy Blanton. Nancy has been a writer since childhood. Her father and their Irish heritage were influential in her life and her writing. When she's not writing, she can be found walking along the beach, spending time with her husband, and catering to their cats. Nancy is a member of the Historical Novel Society, the Florida Writers Association, and the Independent Book Publishers Association, and is a founder of the um, Amelia Indie Authors. Nancy originally majored in English until her roommate convinced her to change to journalism. She worked for newspapers, then trade press, then corporate communications, where I met her in Seattle. Her passion for writing eclipsed by was eclipsed by business speak. Um, Her novel, When Starlings Fly as One, is her fourth novel set in the 17th century in Ireland. She is she expertly weaves facts and history with her fiction for an enjoyable and informative blend. Nancy, welcome to A Novel Talk.
Thank you, Carl and Wendy. I'm so excited to be a part of this today. I loved hearing about all of your work and oh my God, Wendy, I'm so proud of you for your contract. And these titles of your books just blow me away. They are so fun.
Thank you so
She is
much.
clever.
Well, talk about being blown away. Your book, When Starlings Fly as One. Oh boy, I really enjoyed that read. It's just an engaging historical fiction about Irish English tensions in 1642 and the beginning battle of a decade-long war. Nancy, what drew your interest to write about this period?
You just said it basically, is that this period was so fraught with conflict and change that there are a zillion stories that I could pick up and read and write about. And it actually became a mission for me to write about the 17th century. I was a fan of Diana Gabaldon's series Outlander, and I really admired and learned a lot from her depth of research. So I kind of felt like she owned the 18th century because almost everyone knows of her. And
Mm-hmm.
then the 16th century, I'd read a lot of books about the Tudor reign, and I knew a lot about that period, but I was quite tired of it. There's a lot of movies and so forth, and I was sick of the Tudors. So uh, I know Tudor books sell, and I think that people seem to like to read about what they already know, but I wanted to write about something fresh and new that people didn't know. And the 17th century seems to be skipped over a lot. It's not really a pretty time in English or Irish history because of those so much great change, and humans resist change. but I wanted to write about Ireland. And once I put Ireland in the 17th century together, I was totally hooked. And my goal is to continue writing books until I have covered the century from end to end.
Wow. Well, you've got me totally hooked in this period of history.
They were just waiting on you to cover the 17th century. That's what they were
If
waiting
only,
on.
if only.
Um, I also loved this book. I'm not a big history guy. I did everything in my power to avoid history when I was in school. Um, uh, but I loved this. I loved this book. It was so engaging.
Thank
Rathbury Castle is one of the locations in the book. It's the main location in the book. When Starlings Fly is one, but it's more than a location. It's almost its own character. Meryl, the protagonist, actually refers to the castle as her at least once, and I think a couple of times. Can you talk more about how you brought a mound of wood, stone, and thatch to life?
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that it seems that I did. The castle is central to the whole story because the story is about the siege at Rathbury Castle, which it was the longest siege in Ireland's entire history. And so the castle itself had to come alive, in my view. And that means, as we know, using all five senses wherever possible. Rathbury's like a good mother. She's always there. She's a source of safety and comfort and nourishment. And when those needs are met, uh, you can also appreciate her beauty and how she changes with the different times of day and the different types of weather. And then also, yet because of her role, and she's needed, but she's also trapped there like everybody else, and she's vulnerable to whatever may come. And so Meryl, as the protagonist, relates to this because she feels trapped within her circumstances. So there's a very, very strong connection between the protagonist and the castle itself.
Now, Meryl is serving maid to Lady Carey at the time when she spends an afternoon sketching a group of starlings. And she notes that the ancient spirits say that those birds symbolize, quote, courage, unity, and strength in numbers. They gather in such great flocks and move as if they were a single creature. And then, in contrast, Merrill also notes that the biblical interpretation would be desire and a warning to resist devil temptation. Can you talk about this choice of desire or courage within your book?
Absolutely. It's funny because I think even now there is conflict between those who are in Ireland who are steeped in the religion, and then those who still relate back to the old pagan myths and the old pagan beliefs. And so that's kind of caught up in this whole event that's happening here and her thoughts about this. I did do some research about the symbolism. And Meryl, by the way, is a name that comes from the Dutch word meaning blackbird. So
Oh,
courage and desire represent to me the major struggle for her throughout the whole story. She wants to be free, but she fights for respect. She wants love and belonging, and yet she seeks independence at every chance. She sneaks around and she hides, and yet she's heroic. She's freeing Irish prisoners at one time during the book with little concern for herself. She has a lot of courage. But I think by the end of the book, she's reconciled that courage with her desire. And that may be for the reader to decide how she goes about doing that. But I think it's an important theme throughout the book.
I agree, and she is a very courageous, crafty, and I'd even say clever girl. She moves, as you said, she moves unnoticed through many of the environments throughout the story. Um, she attributes this to her this ability to her size, but there's also a lot of cunning mind behind her uh, choice in movements and when to move and where to move. Can you tell us how she thinks her way out of trouble?
I think because she's an orphan, she depends upon others for survival. So she has to make herself useful. Her thinking is kind of impulsive and reactive. And she would have learned early on how to manipulate Lady Carey to get what she wants. I mean, we all kind of, by the age of 8 or 10, know how to manipulate our parents pretty well. So I think we kind of learned that. She knows how to use her size to advantage, to do things and go places that other people can't. She finds good purpose in it. She doesn't shrink from dressing as a boy so that she can go places that girls can't. And certainly in that time, girls couldn't go much farther than the kitchen door. She's responsive. She doesn't hesitate when she sees an opportunity or when an idea strikes her. And so again, I think courage becomes a big driver for her. But more than this, she is daring. If she can do something big, like save Rathbury Castle, maybe she'll finally earn that respect that she so desires.
There are some fascinating scenes of military strategy choices that are made by different characters in When Starlings Fly as One. How do you research this aspect of the story? And as an author, what's important in how you write about it in the book?
This was a particularly, and always is a particularly challenging aspect of writing about the Irish, because of course, we know that old adage that the winner writes the history, right?
Yes.
And that would be the English. So the rebellion of 1641, where this is set, is well documented by the English. Battles are reported by their commanders to Parliament or to the king. And in finding these reports, it's really almost as easy as doing it on Google. You can find them. I found Sir Arthur Frecker's report of Rathbury's siege in the 1895 Journal of the Cork Historical and Archaeological Society. Believe it or not, I was just stumbling through it, and there it was. That's the kind of places I go. But then there's the 1641 depositions that the Trinity College manages. And these are a great resource that were taken after Cromwell's march, with people giving testimony about things that happened to them and things that took place. But they are by Protestants and some Catholics in Ireland, and they're describing their suffering and their losses and alleged crimes committed by the Irish rebels. They're thinking they might be able to get some kind of government reimbursement. So it often reads to me like people trying to squeeze the most out of their homeowner's insurance after a fire. You know, they're trying to get the most reimbursement they can. So what you see is maybe gross exaggeration or even an outright lie in some of their reports. There's a number of Irish scholars now who are really digging deeper to try and uncover the truth from the Irish perspective. And there's one example that shows up in my book. After the Battle of Clonakilty, somebody wrote a report saying that 600 Irish soldiers drowned after that battle in Clonakilty Bay. And I've been there, and it's beautiful, but it's very shallow. And so I found this figure repeated in several documents, the same thing, 600, 600, 600. But I finally found one book by an Irish historian who examined the scene himself and quite clearly said that the bay is fairly shallow there. Most of the Irish grew up around there, probably went swimming there, probably went fishing there. Such as 600 drownings was very unlikely to him as well. He said 16 drownings was probably more probable. But at that time, the English soldiers were rewarded for their valor. They were given Irish land. And so an exaggeration of success against the Irish probably wouldn't be questioned by the superiors back in London. And the result for those soldiers could be quite lucrative.
Yeah, show me the money.
Interesting.
So you also asked how I write about a battle like this. It's with great care because I don't like to write about gore and atrocity.
Yeah.
I know it took place. I just feel my purpose is to show the larger picture of what's happening and in the vicinity of Rathbury Castle while the siege was carried on. So I tried to show how they fought in terms of strategy and preparedness, success and failure. And in the case of Teague Onduna McCarthy, who was the Irish leader, I wanted to show his sense of honor because that's something he was known for and something you would never find in the depositions.
Yeah, the battle scenes are well done and absent of gore, which is nice. Um, the horsemaster Ty O'Daly, enjoys an interesting position of trust with Sir Arthur. This being despite he's Irish and of low birth. Um, um, and many people in Rathbury Castle might even perceive him as the enemy. Is there some element of their history that you'd like to share with our listeners that explain this?
Absolutely. The Irish have been breeding horses and developing coveted bloodlines since at least the 13th century. And they developed what was known as the Irish hobby, was extinct now, but all those bloodlines are still running through horse breeding all over Europe. The hobby was light and swift, good for battles and good for races. And so Ireland's reputation was always for fine horsemanship. My father even bought a horse from Ireland years ago, and he had it shipped home to Florida. It was big and it was strong. My dad was 6'4", and he was big, and he had to have a big horse. And so we had this horse named Harrigan. I can't claim any hereditary skill because I'm allergic to them. but still, if you go to Ireland, I'm not sure, maybe it's in the fall or in the summer, but they have horse fairs at various locations that have been there for hundreds of years, where people buy and trade horses.
Fascinating.
Well, the Irish leader, Teague, addresses his men at one low point, saying in part, quote, "It's far better to die quickly, fighting with passion, than to die slowly of starvation and humiliation." Can you talk a little about this leader and his contrast with his opponent, Sir Arthur Freake?
That's one I should have told you. It's Freka.
Oh, Freka. Okay, thank you. Oh, my pronunciations are terrible. Oh, well, okay. Freka.
You would never guess. It's spelled Freke, but the family says it's Freka.
Yeah, I took it literally from the spelling.
So this statement would have been really empowering to Teague's men at that point. They'd lost friends and brothers in battle. And if the English succeeded, these men stood to lose their status, their lands, their traditions, and their livelihood. Many of them had seen from the Desmond rebellions that went on years before this one. They saw scorched earth tactics, and the English had used those to deprive the Irish of food. They would have known there was no turning back. They followed Teague with great respect and loyalty because it was his due. He was the chosen leader. The clans, it wasn't necessarily by birth that leaders succeeded. The clans, if that person, the son of if a leader passed away, his son wouldn't necessarily ascend if the rest of the clan didn't think he was up to it. They could vote and choose the person that they thought was the best leader. So it was a different way of life. Once chosen, whoever was the leader, they chose as leader, they owed him allegiance. And as part of their service to him, many men were trained at an early age for fighting and skirmishing. They knew how to slip in and out of the woods and hide themselves and to attack and run. Sir Arthur, on the other hand, had wealth. He was a grandson of a member of Parliament who served in high office under both Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. He was English. He bought the castle. He hired the soldiers and servants, and they owed him no loyalty. They thought it was Sir Arthur's responsibility to keep them safe and fed. And Sir Arthur meant to be a gentleman farmer, making money primarily off the wool from his sheep. And he housed a garrison of soldiers meant to protect the region. But they expected to be paid on time and properly fed. So what Sir Arthur lacked in loyalty, he made up for with large artillery that the Irish couldn't match.
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast between the two, very much so.
Their approach toward their men too. Very
Yes.
interesting. Um, Another interesting character is Mistress Dorothy. She's the mistress of Rathbury Castle. She's married to Sir Arthur. She is a dominant force in the castle, especially where Meryl and her friend Jane are concerned. Um, can you tell us more about this strong woman? And she's a strong woman during a time when women were generally seen as meek and timid.
Mistress Dorothy, she's another manipulative woman, I would say. um,
Yeah.
she she
What I like
brings
about her.
she brings more conflict into Meryl's world, and she's, I think, because she grew up the way she is, she's an elevated lady. She's entitled and selfish, and she expects to be served all the time. She expects to be brought food and comfort, even though the siege is going on around her. She does, as many women did, and then perhaps still do in some places, is that she appears meek and weak in Sir Arthur's presence. But behind his back, she schemes and manipulates in her own interests. She insists that any news from within the castle comes to her first so that she can present it to Sir Arthur, and then he'll think that she's his true helpmate. She's pregnant at the time the siege begins, and she doesn't even tell Arthur about it because she's afraid if he knows about it, he'll send her away. And she needs to be there. She feels like she has to be there with him and whatever's going on, or else she'll lose her hold. She uses people like Meryl to act on her behalf or suffer consequences. She's strong in some ways, but the way she uses her power makes her really malicious and destructive. And Meryl is eager to get away from her.
While the leaders are working to rally their followers, Meryl decides, quote, I'd not wait around for someone to come to my rescue. How does her decision to act impact those she cares for the most?
At this point of the story, when she says that, Meryl has witnessed not only fighting from outside the castle, but also fighting within as food and comforts become really scarce. Her only friend has been expelled from the castle keep because she's Irish. So she rarely sees her love interest either, Ty, who's busy with the stables and the horses and helping the soldiers. So from this point, she'll be keenly aware of changes and opportunities and looking for a way out. She's feeling less confident than Sir Arthur that the English will come to their rescue. So by necessity, and the softness of her youth now has to kind of harden against the frightening and impossible circumstances. And as we said before, she's a person who has ideas and is looking, oh my gosh. I think I got an Amber Alert. I'm so sorry. Can you bleep that out?
Hopefully it's not anything serious.
No, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's an Amber Alert. I'm so sorry. Anyway, where were we?
Well, that sort of goes with your story in some parts, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen, right?
No, I didn't. I had many surprises.
So anyway, she's Meryl's the type of person, she just wants to do something. She wants, even if she doesn't have any power, she wants to try. And she's always coming up with ideas. And so I think as you ask how it affects her loved ones, they're concerned about her, and they don't really believe that she can do the things that she thinks she can do. So I think they worry about her. But it turns out maybe she can.
As a reader, I worried about her on many occasions.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Is, feel connected and worry about these characters?
I was very connected to this character, yes.
Um,
Yeah.
the Irish countryside that you describe is beautiful. It's a vivid backdrop, even during the hardships of war. How do you mix the natural beauty of Ireland with the adversities that the residents of uh, Castle Rathbury experienced?
That's a tough question. It really is. There in the
That's why I saved
beginning,
it
it's
for last.
it's a zinger. In the beginning, it's really easy to describe the castle and some rich interiors and the trees and the rolling hills and the long sandy shores. But as the story proceeds, the descriptions must turn more inward within the stone walls, within the castle. The gardens are torn apart for and used for other purposes. There are dark rooms and there's the battlefields, and the valley gets filled with military camps and so on. So the story really leads the way of what we have to show the reader. Um, Meryl, Ty, and Jane maintain the memory of their beloved places, and so those are still there throughout. And these help remind the reader of where they are, and that will be the future for them. And so I think that is a measure of hope. Also, that there's beauty to be found among the ruins, as any tourist in Ireland would agree.
Well, that's true. Speaking of beauty, could we maybe get some of your beautiful words from the Starlings Fly as One? Uh, would you favor us with a reading?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that, and I'm honored that you asked. There is one thing I would be interested in reading, and it's right at the beginning when Sir Arthur and the rest of the people within the castle first realized that the castle's under siege. So I'm starting right here when they see men advancing toward the castle. The men advanced 30 feet, and then on the hill's rim behind them, another man stepped up. He was very tall, his breastplate and silver helmet gleaming. A long and broad red sash flapped boldly behind him like the ship's sail in fair wind. "Who is that?" Sir Arthur asked. "Teague O'Down," Tynan said. Sir Arthur lowered the spyglass and turned to look at Tynan. Beecher stared at him as well. Tynan returned a flinty glare. So what if he was just the stable marshal and not a ranking soldier in the garrison? He knew better than any of them who these people were and what they were about. "How do you know that?" Sir Arthur asked. "Because I know him. Everyone around Dunmanway knows him. He owns the castle there. People call him Teague the Hospitious because he shows great hospitality to his guests and treats them generously." "I know what hospitious means, O'Daly." Aye, he supposed he had that coming. But sometimes English folk needed reminding that the Irish were as civilized as they. "Sir, what I mean to say is he's lord of the Crooked Valley, the prince of that region they call Glenacrom, a blood relation to the McCarthys all over County Cork." Sir Arthur and Beecher looked at each other and then back at the towering figure on the hilltop. After a few moments, O'Down began to descend the hill, and as he moved, so moved the 5 men before him, farther and farther toward Rathbury. They stopped and remained very still as the war pipes keened. Then suddenly the piper stopped, and only sounds were the wind and the raging tussle of the red and white standard. O'Down held his arms at his side, palms up, raised them wide until they were level with his shoulders. Instantly, a thunder shook the earth, and a great dark line appeared at the rim of the hill. And then it grew darker and heavier, and then and wider still, until it became clear that the line was not one thing but many. Soldiers in close formation, hundreds of them, dressed in earth-colored cloaks and woolens, marching up and over the hill. And forward they came, solid as a mudslide, dusky, heavy, rumbling in their march, the clatter of pikes, swords, clubs, and muskets adding to the terrible sound, and the frightening spectacle of so vast a unified Irish army. On and on they came until the dark line blanketed the entire hill. "Merciful God," Sir Arthur said. "Captain Beecher, how many men did Mr. Sellers count when he saw the Irish marching on the strand?" Beecher, built like a trunk of an oak, and with as much humor, replied flatly, "60 men, sir. in 2 companies. Yes, as I thought. And how many would you say stand before us now? 800, sir, at the very least. 800 and maybe a good 1,000. But I've never seen such a gathering of them before. Where have they all come from? O'Down is a respected clan leader, Tynan said. When he summons, men come to him in tribute from all parts of the barony. It is their sworn duty. He's a wicked man to do this, Sir Arthur said. Forgive me, sir, but in truth he is not. Men follow him willingly and with pride. With such numbers he could easily march, overrun the castle, and it would be all over in a matter of hours. But he values life and strikes only when alternatives fail. I should hardly call this a mercy, O'Daly. You risk impertinence. What he intends is terror. Aye, sir.
Wow, I love
Oh,
that scene.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, Nancy. That's
Well,
great.
Thanks for the opportunity to read that. It's kind of fun.
Yes, Nancy, and thank you for joining us on A Novel Talk. And listeners, you're going to want to learn more about this fascinating author. Check out her website, www.nancyblanton.com. That's NANCYBLANTON.com. Um, don't forget to follow her on Twitter and Instagram and like her on Facebook. Details are all on her website. Um, thank you for joining us on A Novel Talk with Nancy Blanton. And remember, a novel read leads to a novel talk.